like to thank everyone for coming today. We're here to talk about the transportation bill that was passed, and it was now Act 89. And we had a lot of questions when it was, going through the legislature. And going back to when I was first elected, 2006, the very first thing I did was look in my district and study the structurally deficient bridges. And I found there were quite a few. In fact, I wouldn't even go over the George Wade Bridge. I just avoid it with all cost. That has been fixed. There was also a bridge in my upper end, went into Millersburg. That was totally replaced. But there's a lot of bridges throughout Pennsylvania that aren't safe. And I know there was a lot of controversy with this bill, but I had to look to the safety of the constituents, my people that I represent, and all over Pennsylvania, and make sure that we did have a safe state. So today I'm joined with the Secretary of Transportation, Barry Shope, with Mike Kaiser, District 8 Executive, and Greg Penny sitting over there. You're welcome to go over here and join us and get questions too.
Going to handle the mic, I think.
Okay, and we also have Paul Nazzo, who's our Legislative Affairs person sitting back there. So we have a lot of transportation people here. I'm going to ask Barry to start off and kind of tell you about the bill a little bit, and we will eventually have a question-answer period.
Thank you, Representative. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking some time to come out and talk to us. I want to tell you first, I want to thank the Representative for her proactive action in this bill and for the thoughtful dialogue that she and I had leading up to it. These are not easy issues for government officials, for elected officials, for my boss, for Governor Corbett. But in the end, each one of us that runs for office or takes an appointed position like this carries a responsibility for the position. Meaning when we come in, we have to take an assessment of what the condition is of the assets that we have the responsibility to maintain. And as Sue said, ultimately, we have a responsibility for public safety. The last time the legislature took significant action on transportation was 1997, 16 years ago, 17 years now, in 2014. And clearly, the effect of that legislation, a 3.5-cent gas tax and very moderate changes to registration and license fees, has eroded in terms of buying power just with inflation and the fuel efficiency of vehicles. If you think yourself back to what you might have been driving in 1996, even if you're driving the same model car today that you drove in 1996, I guarantee you it gets better fuel mileage because the federal government has mandated it, and the auto manufacturers have done so. As a result, while we're seeing the same vehicle miles traveled over our system, an aging system, we're seeing less revenue per vehicle because people are getting more fuel-efficient vehicles. That coupled with inflation, the materials we buy are no different than materials that private companies buy. Asphalt, steel, concrete, pipes, all the things we use to build roads and bridges cost more today, just like it costs you more for everything that you buy. And as a result, our costs have gone up, our revenues have gone down, and the result has been the system has gotten older and deteriorated because we've not been able to keep up with it. So when Governor Corbett came into office, he first asked us to set up a funding advisory committee, which I chaired. There's a 40-member task force, which was assigned to both look at modernization of our transportation approach, meaning how we actually use the dollars we get, and revenue sources to identify the shortfall in funding to take care of this system. And what Representative Helm faced and every other sitting legislator faced was a decision on this topic, and the decision of whether to invest more, and clearly, and we'll talk about this I'm sure today, is charge the users more for that investment, or to continue to let it erode and degrade and age. In essence, put it off. And that's what's been done for a long time. And if you keep putting it off, the backlog or the bill keeps getting higher. And what's happened over the years is as we continued to underinvest and the legislature did not take action year after year after year, it was a little bit like what I like to call a credit card with a high balance. And probably everybody at some point in your life, I know when I graduated college, the interest rates were like 18.5%. You get a credit card and you run a balance up and you make a minimum payment. And the next month, the total's higher than it was the month before when you made your minimum payment. And in essence, that's what we were doing with our infrastructure system. We just kept putting it off, putting it off, and putting it off. And the debt, if you will, the backlog of needs kept growing every year. And what this legislature did, by an 86% vote in the Senate and then by a majority vote in the House, is to say we can't continue to do this because all we're doing is putting this off and meaning a higher cost for some future generation. And while each one of us are going to pay a little bit more for the access to the road and transportation system that we use and all the businesses use, it will get better as we invest in it. And Mike Kaiser is going to go over some of the major projects just in this area. They're going to be built as a result of this. It would not have occurred had this bill not gone forward. In addition, we'll take care of the existing system, not only add to it, but take care of the existing system, rebuilding what needs to be rebuilt, bridges, pavement, traffic signals, and in essence, taking care of the system that we own. When I say we, I mean each one of you in the audience. We all own it. These are collective assets owned by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And just like the cars that we all own and drive, just like the homes that we have to pay for maintenance, we have to pay for the rehabilitation, and ultimately pay for the replacement of different things that we own. And our highway system is no different. And for the legislators that voted for this, it certainly wasn't an easy decision, but I think in the end, what they realized is that they didn't do it now, and they plan to continue to be a legislator, this issue was not going to go away. It was still going to be here, and it was just going to become more costly. So in essence, this was a decision, if you're a fiscal conservative, it was a decision of saying, let's reduce the overall cost by dealing with it now, really, rather than putting it off and having a higher cost at a future date. I know that was Governor Corbett's approach, and he felt the same way Representative Helm did in her introductory comments. Was this about public safety, about kids riding school buses, about all of us riding on roads and bridges, and about taking care of public safety? And it was a responsibility, as he says many times. It isn't a choice once you take these positions. Once you run for office and say, I'm going to accept the responsibility of governing, it's a responsibility of the job. And that's the way I felt as cabinet secretary, as I was advising him on the status and condition of our transportation system. And I felt there wasn't a choice. It was simply a matter of when and how much we wanted to charge the users. We could have waited. We could have said, let's not do it now. Let's wait for 3 or 4 more years. And instead of a $2.5 billion bill, it would have been a $3.5 billion bill. It would not. It's not going to go away. These 40,000 miles of road, 25,000 bridges that we own as a state, 77,000 miles of road under local jurisdiction. No one has ever, in all the years I've been in this position of hearing, suggested to me the solution was to get rid of 10,000 miles of road, just eliminate them. So everybody said we need to take care of it, we need to keep it, and obviously there's a reluctance to pay more. But for PennDOT, we're a lot like a utility company, meaning we take care of assets and we charge the users for the system. And I would question all of you, if you think about your water, sewer, phone, electric, cell phone, cable TV bill, have they gone down as people have rebuilt systems, as they've expanded systems and provided you more access, or have they gone up? And I think we all know the answer to that. And for us at PennDOT, we invest the amount of money that the users give us to rebuild the system that the users use. And what happened in this bill, to talk about the bill a little bit, is the legislature had many choices. There's a whole array of choices of how you fund transportation. If you go to different states, you'll see all kinds of different choices. Some states might charge you as much as $300 a year to register your car. We charge $36. Some states might have a lower gas tax than we do. Some might have more tolling. Some might use general fund taxes, sales taxes, and others to fund transportation. Here in Pennsylvania, the governor and the legislative leadership felt that the fairest way was a user-based system, meaning a low charge, keeping the rate of access. Think about your water bill at home or your electric bill. You get a charge to be connected to the system, a flat charge, and then depending on how much electricity you use, you pay more. And here in Pennsylvania, what we elected to do was keep the access charge, meaning your license registration fees, lower. We're one of the lowest in the nation. Keep those low. And then the more you use the system, the more you pay, including out-of-state truckers that pass through the state. Had we, instead of raising the fuel tax, looked at and uncapping the oil company franchise tax, instead of doing that, if we would have said, let's go to a higher registration fee, out-of-state truckers wouldn't have paid that. Only Pennsylvania residents would have paid it. This is a true user-based fee for everyone who uses the system. Is it increased? Yes. Is it going to cost you more? Yes. But if we didn't deal with it and waited for a few more years, it would cost you even more. If this would have been dealt with 10 years ago, it would have cost less 10 years ago than it did now. And what the legislature has done by uncapping the oil company franchise tax and building inflation into it is to basically say that this bill is going to have a long life to it, meaning that we're not going to have this situation where we're continually underinvesting for decades and building up this backlog of needs. So ultimately, I think it's a good piece of legislation. I know that there's a concern anytime we're asking anybody to pay more, but the reality is if you don't deal with it, you're paying then too. You're paying in terms of increased cost, as we unfortunately have to weight restrict more bridges and force trucks to take a longer route to get products to market. As roadway surfaces deteriorate, you're paying more in wear and tear in your car. As congestion continues to increase in areas where we can't afford to do anything about it, you're paying more to sit in traffic. So there's a cost of doing nothing. And the cost in this case of solving the problem, 5 years from now, the average motorist, somebody that drives 12,000 miles a year, will probably pay, if all these costs that the legislature put into the oil company franchise tax are passed on, you may pay as much as $2.50 more a week less than the price of 1 gallon of gas for safer and better roads and less congestion. And believe me, if you compare that to the cost of doing nothing, it's a much better deal. And Representative Helm and I had a lot of discussions about this. I don't want any of you or constituents to think that she entered this discussion or debate and cast her vote lightly. She and I had a number of one-on-one conversations as well as a number of conversations with her caucus to vet and discuss all the different aspects of this bill. In the end, I think she and many other legislators like her made the decision that this is not something to be put off in terms of public safety. It's not something to be put off in terms of economic competitiveness. It's not something that we put off and somehow have it be a lower cost going forward. And for those reasons, Act 99 got passed. And I'm thankful that it did. For my role as secretary, I can now tell you that we're going to start improving the highway and bridge conditions around the Commonwealth, and we can be competitive economically. The last thing I'll close with before I turn to Mike is just say when I say competitive economically, companies that look at either staying, expanding, or coming to Pennsylvania frequently come visit DCED Secretary Alan Walker. And then they ask to see me. And I can't tell you how many companies have met with Secretary Walker and then came and said, Secretary Shoke, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about your mass transit systems in urban areas, how my people are going to get to and from work in urban areas. I want to talk about your bridge conditions because I haul materials by trucks, and I'm concerned about your bridge conditions. And I'm going to make my decision on whether I'm going to locate my company in Pennsylvania to hire people or not on the basis, partially, of transportation investment. And it became even more apparent in the last year when Maryland passed a significant transportation bill and Virginia passed a significant transportation bill. We started losing companies to other states when they were looking at the Mid-Atlantic region and saying, if we're going to locate somewhere in the Mid-Atlantic region, we're going to locate somewhere where they're going to take care of their infrastructure. And we lost some companies to Virginia and Maryland who were concerned about our ability to meet our infrastructure needs. And that affects not only our economic competitiveness in terms of attracting companies, but ultimately affects our tax base in terms of workers. So this bill sent a message to the business community, and I will tell you the business community, the state chamber and all the chambers across the state strongly supported this measure because they knew how important it was to attract and retain companies. So it is a good piece of legislation, a long-term solution to our transportation funding problems, and one that I'll be happy to answer questions to. I'm going to let Mike talk to you about some of the bigger projects that would actually occur in this region that otherwise would not have occurred without this bill.
I'd just like to say something. I appreciate what you're saying, Secretary Shoke. You never hid from me. It's like that was the one thing, like I was back and forth, yes and no in this bill constantly. And he came to our caucus. Anytime we asked him, our local caucus, our big caucus, we were always in the hallways. Like I had walk out. There was always accessible to me. I always had a question for you, to decide which way I wanted to go. So you always had the right answers. And I felt like when I finally voted for it that I definitely voted the right way. Now we're going to hear from Mike Kaiser. I will say I'm also very fortunate to have Mike be my District 8 executive because he's always there for me also. June a year ago, I had asked him to come to a meeting in the upper end of Dauphin County, and that was when the budget was going on, and unfortunately, I couldn't even make the meeting, but he went, and he's always there to answer questions for the whole district. So when you come in, if you didn't get the 2 sheets, please go up to see Deb and get them because this does list all the projects, one for my current district and one for the district, which December 1st, 2014, when redistricting actually is final, and it will be the new districts. So that's why you have 2 different sheets. But Mike, if you'd like to talk about the projects, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, thank you. And again, I just want to thank everyone for coming out here on a quite cold day here in Pennsylvania. I'm happy to see the room is filled here, which I think lends to the interest here of the subject. Also want to thank Barry. We had a lot of folks put a lot of time into this, a lot of effort. None more than Barry, so we have him to thank for continuing to lead this process through the last 2.5 years or so, and also Representative Helm. I can say not only is she a state representative, but she happens to be my representative as well, so thank you, and we appreciate the comments. I'm just going to talk about several projects in the area that, again, as Barry had mentioned, would not happen without the additional revenue. And I will add that these projects, as well as the current projects we have a Decade of Investment website that's accessible right from our homepage with the Department of Transportation. But again, just some interest here, right here in the area. I would say let's talk about I-83. Everyone knows the condition of I-83. We have a lot of traffic congestion, not only in the AM and the PM peaks, but throughout the entire day. What this allows is an investment of what we have is over $800 million in I-83. Again, these things will not happen overnight. It'll take years for some of this stuff to for us to complete the engineering, to buy the right of way. And again, you heard the number there, but we have I-83 broken down into essentially three sections. We have an area from kind of on the north side of the Eisenhower interchange up to I-81. That would be one of the first projects we advanced. We had been working on that several years ago from an engineering standpoint, and since we passed, and even leading up to passing a transportation bill, we've re-engaged our consultant firm on that, and that is an active job. Again, from Eisenhower up to I-81. We have to look at the Eisenhower interchange itself. That would be another section of a breakout section that would take us down to about 19th Street. And then we have a third section that we would look at, again, coming across the South Bridge up to Eisenhower. All full reconstruction. At a minimum, 6 lanes is what we'd be looking to do there, and certainly an improvement that I know everyone in the area has been looking forward to for years. And you do just one project like that, and you really help the rest of the system. We know a lot of folks avoid I-83, and that adds congestion on other routes. Route 22, Progress Avenue, Front Street, you name it. Another project that's close to the area here is we'd like to add a third lane from I-81, I-83 up to the interchange there at Mountain Road. Again, very congested area. Would help with the AM and PM peaks. Now, that's a job that we're probably going to be able to do much sooner than all the 83 work. It's probably some right away, but minimal, and the costs obviously aren't quite as high for something like that. We're going to continue to do a lot of bridges. Representative Helm mentioned the bridges. We have 444 just in Dauphin County. We still have 37 of those that are structurally deficient, so we're going to continue a strong program of bridge replacements, bridge preservation, and rehabilitation to keep all of our bridges in good condition. District 8 alone, by the way, has over 3,400 bridges. District 8, so a lot of resources and a lot of assets to take care of there. So again, something like the interchange at I-81. I know we were in there I-81 and 322 with the tanker fire here in May. I can tell you we're going to do a rehabilitation of all those bridges, 2 of which are already completed with the work that we've done there this past year. That's about $26 million for a project like that. River Relief Route, we have 2 different projects on 22-322 heading north out of Harrisburg. Another project that I think is important for the region is the reconstruction of 283. That would be from the Turnpike heading towards Lancaster County, that last piece there in Dauphin County. It's about an $80 million improvement, and that's one that we have been working on. We're working with central office. We're looking to shape our 2014 program, and that's one that, if we have the available revenues early, that's one that we'd like to do. Probably ahead of that would be I-283. We want to do a rehabilitation of I-283 from the Eisenhower interchange down to the Turnpike. A little bit further out, a new interchange with I-283, 283 in the Turnpike itself. Every day we have a lot of queuing there. And it's not only PM now, it's also the AM commutes, folks coming up from Lancaster County. You have some queuing there in that area. So again, these are the kind of projects I can continue with this. Clark's Ferry Bridge, that's a project there we want to do a rehabilitation on. They're large bridges across the river. They are not, they take a lot of resources. That one we have estimated at $25 million. And again, just to round out, we would continue doing our normal bridge and resurfacing work as well. And I'll just remind everyone that all these projects are shown on the Decade of Investment. You can hop on there and it'll give you a brief description, but if you have any questions about that, certainly you can contact District 8, and we'll get you some additional information. So that's kind of the highlights of the area.
Maybe, see, before we take questions, I'll just throw out one final thing is, we've focused my comments and Mike's about the projects we're doing, and I've talked about the revenue. There's a lot of things in this bill that are going to help us reduce costs. One, prevailing wage has been updated from 25,000 to 100,000 threshold for transportation work, which is going to be a big savings for local government. Not a big deal for us because we use a lot of federal dollars where Davis-Bacon applies, but for local government, there's a lot of projects in local government that were over 25,000 but under 100,000, and prevailing wage will no longer apply for those projects. Secondly, within the department, we've been conducting for 2 years what we call Next Generation at PennDOT, which is really a modernization of looking at all of our business practices and ways we can reduce costs to deliver more projects with the same dollars, whether we got more money or not. This was something we knew we needed to undertake, just like any business would. And one of the big things, when Mike talked about bridges, we do have a lot of bridges in the state. And we piloted the concept called bridge bundling, where in 3 counties we went out and looked at bridges that were going to be done over the next several years and said, okay, if there's 15 bridges we're going to do in this particular county, and 5 of them are between 40 and 45 feet. Instead of designing each one independently, we decided up front those were all going to be 45 feet. That allowed us to standardize certain elements of design and standardize certain elements to prefabricate. And when you do it at an economy of scale, you get a lot of savings. And what we saw is like 30 to 40% savings on design and also about 20 to 30% savings on construction. And what we offered local government was that instead of doing it the old way, meaning designing each one independently, the savings associated with doing it this way, bundling these like bridges together, were such that we told local government, instead of an 80-20 where it's 80% state money and 20% local, if you come in and bundle it, we'll say there's 0 local costs. Because at this method of doing it, doing it with 100% state funding at the new method is less than 80% of the old way of doing it individually. So in essence, once again, we're lowering local government's costs. And that bundling program was so successful that we're now, as Mike said, as we finalize our program this year and decide what bridges we're going to do, we'll be reaching out to local government and saying, here's bundling opportunities, and identify the bridges you're going to do, and we'll look at the opportunity to bundle them with ours to reduce everyone's costs. And then beyond that, we have a public-private partnership law, which was passed by the legislature about 1.5 years ago. And we're in the process now of soliciting bids for private companies to come in and do as many as 500 or 600 bridges statewide, full replacements of these structurally deficient bridges. Something that might have taken local and state government a total of 8 to 10 years to do, we're going to have the private sector do it in 3 years. And they're going to design them, build them, finance them, and take care of them for 30 years, and then turn them back in pre-prescribed conditions to the department or the owner, whether it's department or local government. We expect to see, once again, a tremendous economy of scale savings by doing it that way on a statewide basis. So I don't want you to think whatsoever that this is all about revenue. When we looked at this problem, when Governor Corbett asked me to look at it, he said, I want you to look at it the same way you looked at it when you were running your companies, because my background's 28 years of private business. I had never worked in state government. He said, I want you to look at it the same way. Any company will tell you when you're looking at a need for additional revenue, you'll look at revenue, but you'll also look at your cost side of the business. And you'll first square up your cost side. So on our side, what we're looking at, what we call Next Generation, and again, Mike referenced our website. Go on it and click on a button called Modern PennDOT, and you'll see everything we're doing to try to look at different ways to bring private sector partners in to advise us, the companies that build things for us, design things for us, to tell us of ways we can economize and deliver more with the same dollars. So I want you and all the representatives, we've made presentations, give them updates a couple times a year about what we're doing so that they have the confidence that when they give us any money, whether it's existing money or new money, that we're using it wisely and continue to push the envelope to deliver more with less, not only for us, but also for local government, our business partners. I think that's the role of a lead agency like ours, is to act in a manner that both helps us and then helps our local government partners that are delivering similar products as we are in terms of bridges and roads. So again, besides the decade of investment, you can also look and see what we're doing on the cost side to reduce our costs going forward. With that, Representative, be happy to take questions.
My name is Frank Lynch. I'm a commissioner in Susquehanna Township, and since I got on the board 12 years ago, our most important highway road project was the intersection of Progress Avenue and Walnut Street. We plowed so far about $1.3 million into design studies and engineering into that as part of a local match to get it onto the HATS list. And it's kind of fallen by the wayside, but that intersection is one of the worst intersections on the East Shore, particularly at rush hour, as state workers come back from the city to Susquehanna Township, Lower Paxton Township, and parts east. I noticed that it's not on the list that Sue's staff has put out. Can you give us any indication of whether or not that project is ripe for consideration?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's a good question, and let me tell you what we have been doing. We actually have a project on 22, which is adaptive signal systems. It's using the latest technology to coordinate the traffic volumes throughout the day. Traditionally, in the past, you had your peak hour, and the system kind of ran based on the peak hour. The adaptive signal system will actually adjust to the current traffic volume. So we're hopeful a product like that will help move traffic, and you got to look at more than just the intersection itself. As soon as you go through Progress Avenue, you get up over the hill about 800 feet, you have another traffic signal there at the Rite Aid. I think it's 36th. Then you go out, there's another one at 39th. So, we're looking at the entire corridor. We get something like that in place. Is there an opportunity to come back and look at some additional individual intersection improvements? Certainly. I think the one concern we had with that project, as it is as a standalone, is you make a large investment at that one intersection and you really don't help the overall platooning along the corridor. But again, you get the adaptive signal systems in first. As I had said before, even though the improvements on I-83 are some years out, but you're going to have some additional capacity in there with that. So hopefully that addresses your question there.
That is good to hear. This is our manager, Gary Myers, and we're aware of the adaptive signal system, but it really does not address the needs of the intersection itself because you have two state roads come together,
Right.
And it's a nightmare. It rates a D on Sunday. The only time it has a doesn't have a failing grade is Sunday mornings. It's just a bad intersection. And Gary, I don't know if you want to address anything further.
Correct. We've been trying to address this issue actually since my day one here in Susquehanna Township, which is 19 years ago next month. Representative Helm has been very helpful to us in addressing this issue. She supported us in this safety improvement project. And as President Lynch said, this intersection is an F. It fails at all times of the day except for Sunday afternoons. With the charitable assistance and great assistance of the county commissioners and the Susquehanna Township taxpayers, we have put $1.3 million into the project. I also believe that this particular intersection is a detour route that is used by the department if there's an accident on 83 in that area, and it's an impossible detour because of the contours of the intersection itself. The geometry does not allow the tractor trailers to turn there. We've gone through the community process. We've had community meetings. We've involved Pembroke Borough. We've involved Lower Paxton Township, the school district, the fire companies, everybody imaginable. This intersection has the highest number of traffic accidents of any intersection in Susquehanna Township and perhaps in the central Pennsylvania region. So we really urge the Department of Transportation to consider this project as a priority.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Armbruster. I'm the manager in Pembroke Borough, right next door to Gary. There are three intersections that we have that are part of the corridor that you're trying to fix with the adaptive signals. And believe me, we're very happy to have those. But Gary's right. The traffic there coming out in the afternoon and going in the morning is just incredible. We have 2 lanes through most of the borough on Walnut Street. They're crowded. We've had lots of accidents. Had one yesterday, and it needs to be looked at seriously. I know Gary and Susquehanna Township have had a lot of money put into it over the years with the hats and so on, and we need some assistance along this entire corridor. And we appreciate it if you take a look at it.
Yeah, probably missed an opportunity earlier too. The legislation actually includes some additional funding for traffic signals. We have a significant number of traffic signals throughout the state. Again, I've got a lot of numbers in my head here. I think District 8 has over 750, somewhere in that neighborhood, perhaps even more. But anyway, there is some additional money in there too that allows local municipalities to leverage some dollars as well, Barry.
It does. We started 10 million in year one and ramp up to 40 million. That's local money. It's for local government to basically use for their match, up to a 50% match of the improvement on signals. We really want to make significant investment in what Mike's talking about with adaptive signal technology, because it processes. We're seeing anywhere up to 30% more traffic being processed by the adaptive signals than what happens. And in network, we have Carnegie Mellon right now doing some testing for us out in Pittsburgh on network applications, where you're not looking at a corridor like 22, but also a network, and seeing significant reductions in backlogs and congestion. And it's a relatively low-cost investment. Now, the reason Mike's saying we want to start with that along the corridor is we've had a history at the department of making very expensive fixes to intersections to move a problem a half mile down the road. And if you look at the 22 corridor, it's a little bit like the 15 corridor on the West Shore, that, we've got so much demand that you couldn't build enough lanes to process it. And then when you get to off-peak, you'd have a racetrack, which none of us want. And so, what we're going to try to do is use the adaptive signal technology to see how that works first, because that's something we know is going to be a benefit, and we know it's going to process more vehicles. And then, I don't disagree with you all that we should take another look at the corridor then and see if we do have any choke points that, if relieved, would not simply move the problem. Because we've done a lot of that. Well, we have to be honest with ourselves as a department. We've done a lot of spending $20 million in an intersection and moved a problem a half mile and seen the same problem just occur at the next intersection down. And what we're after is a consistent rate of flow, a consistent, reliable rate of flow, where we don't overbuild in terms of number of lanes and create a racetrack situation in a pedestrian-friendly corridor, a business-friendly corridor like Walnut Street is. So I'm sympathetic to the issue and what you all are describing, but as Mike said, we recognize the need to make a significant upgrade in traffic signal equipment all over the state to help alleviate some of this congestion without the more expensive fixes of the physical roadway and intersection improvements. However, if that's the next step, we'll look at it.
Mr. Secretary, you made a good point there. Perhaps you can explain to me then why I tried to upgrade my traffic signal to provide emergency preemption and was told that I had to reconstruct the entire intersection to bring that up to standards. A project that went from 15,000 to 240,000.
And, I don't know the specific intersection you're talking about, but if you're talking about a preemption, you'd have to look at the intersection geometry to see whether or not it was able. And I don't know the specifics of your project, so I can't comment without knowing the geometrics of whether or not it was a geometric. I don't know if, Mike, you know anything about that or not. But
Paxtang Avenue and Dairy Street. It did nothing for the geometry. There was no problem.
what
with
was
geometry.
the required upgrade?
Handicap ramps, signals, new controller, in spite of the fact that the controller was able to handle the preemption.
Oh, we'll look into it. I don't know like I said, I don't know the specifics. Mike and I'll take a look at it and get back
You
to you.
already complete the work?
We don't have the money.
Okay.
Like I said, it went.
Then I have a chance to help.
Would you identify yourselves so we have that on record?
Ken Beard, Borough Manager from Paxtang Borough.
That's Paxtang and
Dairy.
Dairy. We'll look at it. The issue with the ADA accessible ramps is one that is an expensive issue for all of us, and one that we really don't have a choice on. If we touch an intersection, we're under strict compliance to, if there's pedestrian activity there or potential pedestrian activity in the future, that's an area where once we go in, we're required to address it. So it's possible that component of it, but we'll look at it. I don't want to give you an answer today. It's just that I would tell you that that's an expensive issue for all of us, local and state government, with the compliance. And one of the big issues of that, and we lost a court challenge on this, was the ever-changing requirements that keep getting put out in terms of the grades. And we had put some in Erie, and we're told we had to take them out and replace them, and challenged it and lost. And it was a very expensive situation for us. So I'm sympathetic to the issue for local governments, and believe me, and I'm not at all suggesting that any of us should be not constructing appropriate ADA ramps to comply with, make sure all of our users have accessibility to it. But the ever-changing requirements on it are very difficult for all of us and very expensive. We will look into that and get back to you.
Eric Philman, Councilman for Pakistan Borough. Not that we need to dominate the conversation. Some years ago, when the state was lucky enough to get the money from the federal government under ERA, there was in the Secretary's office kind of a war room showing which projects would be completed or the rough time frame when. I'm looking at the list that's described as new under Representative Helm's district. 92 items on this list, 2/3 of them are in Dauphin County. Do we have any such similar place we can go to see which are first priority on the time list?
You will. What we're going to do with the Decade of Investment website is update it with schedules. You don't see dates on it yet because, frankly, when we put the Decade of Investment together, this revenue builds over a 5-year period, meaning you gradually uncap the oil company franchise tax over 5 years. And we had made estimates of the total dollar amount we'd have over 10 years. And the reason we picked 10 years, frankly, was because, like Mike said, like 83, it's not as though we're going to snap our fingers and build that. We wanted everyone to understand that here's over the next decade things that will change in your area. Because some of the projects will take us that long to get through and design and build. But what we did not do is put schedules on it because we didn't actually know until the bill passed this fall what the actual cash was going to be. So now we're going through, and right now our first priority is to line up this year's construction program, which we have not yet done. The districts are all compiling data for us at the executive level to look at and come up with a letting schedule for this year. We expect it to be, last year I think we did between 1.6 and 1.7. This year we're probably going to do with the new money around $2 billion, 1.9 to $2 billion. So we're right now trying to decide which of these projects are going to be able to get ready and move this year, and then we'll subsequently add dates to the following years as we build into that 5-year of revenue. The legislature also gave us the ability to do some limited bonding if we have projects that are ready to go that we don't have the cash for. I think in today's low interest rates, it behooves us to do some bonding and get the money on the street as fast as possible. So we may take advantage of some of that to accelerate projects that otherwise would have to wait for the available cash to come through. So stay tuned. And probably as we work with our planning partners, I saw Tim Smith come in from Tri-County. We're going to have to work with our planning partners on getting these projects on the tip and getting them programmed. And as we do that, we're going to do it quickly through the winter months, working with the planning partners, and then we'll update this year's program and then the subsequent years. So you will see when these projects are going to move.
Just to clarify, that handout, a lot of the legislative boundaries are changing, so the new represents Sue's new district. So you're going to see some jobs on both sheets. That's why I just wanted to bring that up. It's not new projects.
And unfortunately, my new district doesn't include Paxtang, which I'm not happy about, but you're still going to be taken care of, but don't see yourself on the new one. It's just because that's not in my new district.
I'm Tom Pine, the 5th Ward Commissioner in Susquehanna Township, and I just want to thank you both, Mr. Secretary and Representative Helm, for your support of this legislation, because it's going to be more money for our state highways and bridges. It's going to be more money for our township and other townships in terms of liquid fuels taxes and so forth. I also wanted to make a plug, if I can. Representative Helm, you have already indicated your support for this, and Mr. Secretary, I want to draw your attention to an application that the township has for an RL grant, automated red light enforcement camera grant for $200,000 for a sidewalk project along Union Deposit Road. Union Deposit Road is another one of those main arteries coming in and out of the city. And in our case, in the southern part of Susquehanna Township, we've got a situation where there's no sidewalk, it's a state road, and it's a real hazard for people walking along there going to a commercial area, and I don't know if anybody's been killed there yet, but it's just a matter of time.
What part of Union